criminal and court record in Florida. 56-year-old Cesar Altieri Sayoc Jr. was arrested in the rash of mail bombs. He's been convicted on theft, stolen property, and traffic charges, and in a threat to throw, place, project, or discharge any destructive device. Sayoc was sentenced in August 2002 for threatening to throw a bomb in a conversation with a Florida utility representative, his attorney at the time said. Turkey is asking Saudi Arabia to hand over 18 suspects in the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Fox's Simon Owen reports from Europe.
Turkey's Justice Ministry saying prosecutors have prepared an extradition request for the 18 people Saudi Arabia says it's arrested in connection with the death of journalist Jamal Khashoggi at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. It's now up to the ministry to submit the request. Speaking before the announcement, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said in a message to Saudi authorities, "If you cannot get them to talk, hand them over to us and let us put them on trial." In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
A caravan containing thousands of Central American migrants headed to the U.S. continues to move closer to the border. Speaking today to the Young Black Leadership Summit at the White House, President Trump said he will not allow individuals to enter the country illegally.
Every citizen benefits when we stop foreign countries from cheating our workers. That's what they've been doing, you know.
The migrant caravan is mostly made up of individuals from Honduras and Guatemala. Another caravan, which would be the third overall this year, is now being monitored, that one originating in El Salvador and also moving to the U.S. NBC News says the Megyn Kelly Today Show is being canceled. In a statement, the network news division said the show will not return, a decision that follows fallout from Kelly's on-air comments about blackface. NBC News says the hour that had belonged to Kelly will be hosted next week by other Today Show co-anchors. As social media companies are fending off accusations that they have a bias against conservatives, some liberal groups are applying pressure asking for more censorship. Steve Jordahl reports.
The Center for American Progress, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and 4 other liberal organizations issued 11 pages of recommendations to social media companies and other internet concerns to help them curb what they call hateful activities. Dan Gaynor of MRC Tech Watch says his alarm bells are going off.
This is lefter and leftists getting together and deciding they don't like anybody that they disagree with. I mean, the thoroughly discredited Southern Poverty Law Center. Why do we care what they think?
The issue, however, is does Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and the like care what they think? He says the answer is likely yes.
Unfortunately, some of these organizations will engage with them, and they shouldn't.
The recommendations define hate activity as anything that might defame or target the well-known litany of special class groups, like gender identity and sexual orientation, among others. The problem is that groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center already consider Christians who, for example, hold a biblical definition of marriage hateful. Gaynor says he's not going to give an inch.
You don't run away from danger. You stand up and fight it. And danger has been coming down the pike at the conservative movement for a long time. Online is just a new platform for it.
If internet-related companies take up the recommendations, it not only could silence Christians from social media platforms, it could cripple any Christian organization that uses the internet to raise or collect money. The proposed rules are also aimed at businesses like MasterCard or PayPal that help process financial transactions. I'm Steve Jordahl.
And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau says it will revisit a crucial part of its payday lending industry regulations finalized last year. The Bureau says it will take another look at the ability to repay provision, which would force payday lenders to take into account the ability for their customers to repay their loans in a timely manner. It was aimed at stopping what officials call a harmful industry practice where borrowers renew their loans multiple times.
A doll, a toothbrush, a small musical instrument, a soccer ball with a pump, a teddy bear, cool sunglasses.
The list of items you can pack into an Operation Christmas Child shoebox is pretty much endless.
A jump rope, a toy helicopter.
But the time you have to do it is not. American Family Radio reminds you that National Collection Week begins November 12th. Click the banner at afr.net for details, and then get packing.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Now, the media spent a lot of time earlier this week challenging President Trump's statement that there were MS-13 or maybe Middle Easterners in the caravan that's headed north. I was asked about it, and I said it was inconceivable that there weren't.
If we do not enforce that border, if we let those in that are in gangs, that are traffickers, drug traffickers, sex traffickers, local law enforcement, end up on the front lines. Okay. It makes every town a border town.
It's not all people seeking asylum. And for those seeking asylum, I just want to tell them, please, for your own safety, seek it as soon as possible. Mexico is offering asylum and refuge to everybody who's transiting through Mexico. If you are in fear for your life, please pick it up. Take asylum as soon as you can. Don't make a 6-week journey at the hands of criminals to get here.
The truth is, this caravan is being advanced by leftist groups and human traffickers who have no regard for human life.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome to the program. Oh, yeah. Still here, still alive, still not staying home to cook dinner for my family instead of doing radio. Yeah. Instead, I'll cook dinner for them after the show like I do 6 days a week, 5 days after the show. On Saturdays, I cook dinner whenever I want, and my family eats, and I do radio. Welcome to the Stacy on the Right show. It's so glad to be with you today. So good to be here. The bomber has been identified. The media calls him a Republican, claiming that he registered as a Republican back in 2016. And lots of details are coming out about him. We knew he was going to be found because he left copious amounts of, forensic evidence available for investigators. And so there'll be more. Well, as the story unfolds. Also, Megyn Kelly her show is done over at NBC. And I don't know anyone who has been watching this that is surprised by it. They have had their daggers out for her since the first day she stepped on that expensive stage they built for her. It's as if they hired her away from Fox to eliminate her. Now, I know that would be what some people call a conspiracy theory. But if you look at the steps that they went through to get her and the amount of money that they paid, and you'd say, well, it can't be that they thought that. They really thought she was going to be successful because look at how much they paid her. It was a calculated risk that they took. They were unable to deal with the combination of the hosts before her. I believe it was Hannity and then Kelly and then O'Reilly. And so one way to get rid of that 1, 2, 3 combo is obviously Bill O'Reilly had passed acts of his own that kind of did him in. And Sean Hannity's still there killing it. But Megyn Kelly, she had to be lured away. And she went willingly. I'll never understand it. You know, there's probably, 500,000 women in America who look good enough to be on Fox News, who have the look. And maybe out of that 500,000, maybe 400,000 of them have written books and can do media and can speak well on camera. I mean, there are that many talented women who want to be on that network. And so when you say the competition is fierce, to get a show on Fox News is to reach the pinnacle of broadcasting and to really have established yourself as successful in media. And so for her to leave that, a place where it was her home, and it's this very small, very select group of people who actually work for Fox. The majority of the people you see roaming around there are like me. You're there for a TV hit. You're unpaid. You're really grateful that they're doing your hair and makeup, but that's about it. And of course, there are some contributors, but they are not numerous. And so I'll never understand what made her make that choice. And of course, the rumor mill says that she's, looking to go back there and that Fox is not receptive. And I would not rule it out that she would end up back at Fox in the daytime, not in prime time, but in the daytime, which actually works better for her family. But it's a sad situation to watch people dancing around with glee about what's happened to her. It's just been like a slow motion train wreck. And I hate seeing it happen because whatever you think about her comments to Donald Trump, having met her in person twice, she was really a genuinely kind-hearted, very professional, very talented broadcaster. And so I'm hating this. I hate the way people are really gleefully, excited about seeing her downfall. I kind of cast back to yesterday. She may look, if there's no doubt about it, she's amazing to look at. And she looks like that in person. But it doesn't mean she doesn't have feelings. She does. And I know she's hurting right now. And so I hope that people will remember that she's a person too when they're considering what's happening to her. And it's even more painful. It's one thing to lose your job. It's another thing to lose it in public and have to watch people be happy about it and to gleefully, experience your loss with you. So today on the show, we're going to talk to Kimberly Clay SiC. She's a Republican strategist and political commentator. She's going to come on and talk to us a little bit about news of the day and also the role of women in the upcoming midterm election. Now, I treat the whole woman thing the same way that I treat the whole permanent tan, I'm a black person thing, which is innate characteristic. God made me this way. It's not something that I'm going to leverage for political capital. They're descriptors. They are not identity items. And it really is a sad part of our new reality here in this country that so much of who we are as a person is determined by who a person chooses to have sex with, especially the whole out of marriage sex thing that is so in vogue and so prevalent right now in our culture. If you're a woman, you choose to be identified by what your gender is, as opposed to, it's pretty simple. Christian or no? Come on, work with me here. Christian or no? That's pretty much it. That's all God's going to want to know when you get up to the judgment seat. He's not going to be like, so how much gender studies did you get in while you were down there on earth? No, it's going to be Christian or not. Okay. So let's work with that. And we're also going to be talking about this comment by Matthew Continetti from over at the Washington Free Beacon about how there's a geographic separation forming in the United States. And I find this commentary to be fascinating because we already have, you may have seen this online social media. They'll have a map of the United States and it'll have people say sneakers instead of tennis shoes in this part of the country. And it'll say, eats the most watermelon out of anywhere in the country and, drinks the most orange juice and, speaks with a strange accent no one can understand. And it's meant to make you laugh, but the statements are rooted in truth and they're taking a characteristic of that region of the country. So it's not specifically just one state, it's a region. And they kind of, it's just a points to who they are, who these Americans are based on something that they do or how they sound or how they look or something like that. So we already have those kinds of regional variances in our culture, and they are what make America that's what makes it so fun. When you travel from one part of the country to another, you immediately notice how different the Americans are there. And you kind of, it's not just a field trip. It's wonderful because they're still our people. They're still my people. It's just now, you're in Arizona where everything's hot and Arizonans have a certain way about them and Texans have a certain way about them. And, same thing with Missourians or people from Missouri. Yeah. And especially if you go down to the boot heel, people down there they have their own distinct cultural norms, still Americans, but it's a beautiful thing. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Right now I want to get to the daily confession, which is that God works through all situations to fulfill his purpose. So we know that in all things, leather jacket up against the leather chair, so I'm squeaky. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. That's Romans 8:28. God has a greater purpose in saving us. And that is, this verse is 2 Timothy 1:9. He has saved us and called us to a holy life, not because of anything we have done, but because of his own purpose and grace. Isn't that wonderful? Because if it was because of something that we had done, we would never have been saved. Our righteousness is as filthy rags to a holy God who is unable to sin. And so in order to make us right with him, in order to make it so that we could be in his presence, since we are constantly sinning and he is without sin, we have Jesus Christ clothing us in white, and the righteousness of Jesus Christ permits us to come into the presence of our Heavenly Father and to petition him for help, for our wants and our needs, and for him to take care of us and have a relationship with him. And it's through that sacrifice that we are able to be made whole and to be able to communicate with God. What an awesome way to go into the weekend, rejoicing over that gift of salvation through Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So uplifted there. Now, so you may have heard that we have a ton of young black people Some of them are my age, but they're still all being called young, so I like that. Young black people converged upon yon White House, the People's House, and they hung out with Donald Trump this afternoon. And before Donald Trump appeared so that he could speak to them, because it's the Young Black Conservative Summit put on by Turning Point USA, Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, and they are they're there and they're just exuberant. They're rejoicing at the sound of Donald Trump saying great things about the police. They're chanting USA. These are my kind of people, and I do know a few of the people who were there. So I did not put in an application to register to go. I had a speaking engagement in St. Louis this morning. It was actually, I emceed an event, and it was a prayer event for pastors and people of faith and leaders in the St. Louis area in preparation for the upcoming election. And it was amazing. David Barton of Wall Builders was the keynote speaker, and I got to see so many people, meet so many people. It was wonderful. I can't be in two places at one time, and I don't regret at all that I'm not at Young Black Conservative Summit this first time, maybe next year. But it is so, it's an enthusiastic, uplifting kind of a way for us to kind of just take a peek at what's happening at the White House and see how things are changing under Donald Trump. And I think it's Donald Trump, but I believe it's also prayer from around the country. And then this audience in particular, people are praying for the chains to be broken. I'm talking about the mental chains, the chains that keep us shackled to the idea that if you have a permanent tan, you are only allowed to vote for Democrats. And as more people come out from under that oppression, you see things like what we saw at the White House. Now, you would think that the sight of young Black Americans exuberantly enjoying themselves at the White House in preparation for a speech from the president would be an item of news that would be welcomed. Even if you're on the left, you have to admit these people look happy. But that's not what happened over at CBS. They were trying to explain why young Black men were at the White House. It's number 4.
We also expect in 10 minutes the President of the United States will be speaking. One would expect that he would have at least a comment about this, about the arrest that has been made in connection, I should say, with these various bombs that have been sent to high-profile individuals.
Mm-hmm. Actually, you can see the shot where we're awaiting the president. He's meeting with young Black men today.
Yes,
I believe, right? And you can see that's why the crowd looks the way it is.
That's why the crowd looks the way it is. What is she talking about? See, She should be very happy that no one like me, who looks the way that I look, was sitting near her when she said that's why the crowd looks the way it is. I would have said, how does it look? How does it look to you? A group of young Black, most of them college-educated kids, men and women, people in their 30s, a few people in their 40s, and a few in their 50s, but all of them happen to be Black, and they're standing around waiting for the president, and they have their phones up, and they're chanting USA. That's why the crowd looks like what exactly, liberal? I mean, if you let them, they'll tell you what they really think about Black people. And it's not tolerant. All right, let's go to the phones. We have about a minute. Really quick comment from John in California. Thanks for calling the show today.
Oh, praise the Lord, Stacey.
Praise the Lord.
I'm thankful for you on the radio. I'm really thankful to hear you on there because I know you got the Holy Spirit, and I know that you're being led.
Thank you.
I'm thankful for that, and I know the Lord's going to continue to use you. I just want to talk a little bit. I'm a pastor myself. I wish you could. You sing. I didn't know that. I wish you could hear you sing someday.
No. I don't do any singing. I was emceeing. I was the MC.
We got 30 seconds, though.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
I thought you sing. Well, I got 15 seconds. I just wanted to say that the man that they arrested, I think they really need to look into who this person really is before they come to their conclusions.
Thank you.
And I know the media, the mainstream media, is going to come to a lot of conclusions. They already decided who he was, and they're using that van and the other little evidence, but you look a little bit deeper, they're going to find out things about him.
John, you are so right, and I'm not buying it. I know he registered as a Republican, they have those documents, but I don't buy it. The van, the bombs, everything, it stinks to high heaven to me. It does not seem legit. Thank you so much for calling the show. When we get back, we're going to have Kimberly Clay SiC. She's a Republican strategist. She also happens to have the permanent tan. Stay right there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wileman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. The very first day in Israel, when we're staying in Jerusalem, we go to the Mount of Olives. And it's there at the Mount of Olives we look out over the old city of Jerusalem. It's a spectacular sight. You've seen it in pictures before, but it's another thing to actually be there as we walk down from the Mount of Olives to the Garden of Gethsemane, and we pray there. It's going to be a wonderful time with brothers and sisters from around the country visiting the Holy Land, the land of Jesus. If you want information on this March 14th through the 22nd tour, just call us and we'll send you a brochure. Call 1-800-FAMILIES, F-A-M-I-L-I-E-S, option 5, and leave us your name and your address, and we'll mail you a brochure. Or if you want to simply go online at twholyland.com, everything's there. twholyland.com.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. One of our children, when he was young, had a bad habit of wandering away from us when we were out in public. One day we were in a crowded mall, and this child decided to wander off again, and we started to run after him. I kind of grabbed Karen by the arm and said, let's see if we can teach him a lesson. We didn't rescue him this time. We followed him, never allowing him to leave our sight. Pretty soon he was panic-stricken, and then we appeared. That cured him of his wander-itis, so to speak. That reminds me, just because you can't see God or sense his presence doesn't mean he's not there and watching you. There are times in which God withdraws a sense of his presence so that he can strengthen our faith. God's work in our lives is not conditioned by our ability to feel or sense him. In Job chapter 23, verses 8 through 10, our friend Job was in the midst of enormous suffering. Listen to what he said about God. Behold, I go forward, but he is not there, and backward, but I cannot perceive him. When he acts on the left, I cannot behold him. He turns on the right, and I cannot see him. He knows the way I take. When he has tried me, I shall come forth as gold. Did you hear that line? But he knows the way I take. It's important not to make assumptions about God during your dark moments. He knows exactly where you are and what you're doing, even though you can't see him. Here's what I want you to remember today. We're sometimes confused about what God is up to, but he's not confused. He's in charge, and he's watching our every move.
You've been listening to Legacy Moment with Crawford Loritz, pastor of Fellowship Bible Church in Roswell, Georgia, and heard on the weekly program Living a Legacy. For more information, go to livingalegacy.org.
This is Stacy on the Right with Stacy Washington on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you for being here today. God bless. And it's Friday. Still broadcasting from the Heartland. I'm glad to see the weekend. I had actually not one free morning this week. It was just every day, relentless activity and things that had to be done and events to attend. And I'm so glad I got to do it all, but I'm also glad that there will be a couple of days of rest up ahead. And I'm also glad to welcome our next guest to the program. Kimberly and I have actually met in person, and we've communicated a little bit online, and she is outstanding. She's wonderful at what she does, which is strategizing for the Republican Party, as well as doing political commentating on all of the best channels, Fox News, Fox Business, etc., CNN as well. And so what I'm really happy to have is Kimberly here today to talk to us about women's role in the upcoming midterm elections. Kimberly, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Stacey, how are you?
You know, so I have to admit now, because I said I would, that I was wrong. I said that it was some Democratic plant or some kind of like weird Russian thing. And instead it turns out it's he's self-radicalized, some lunatic who happens to be registered as a Republican down in Florida he sent all these like inoperable bombs.
Yeah. But I mean, I think everyone can understand why you felt, or a lot of people felt, that it could be a Dem trying to basically put a hoax out there to distract us from whatever's going on, because these are the kind of games that we've seen them play in the past. So it is shocking, honestly, that it wasn't someone playing, another game to distract everyone, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of surprised, because I just was thinking to myself, they've already, look what they did with Kavanaugh. Look at the fake charges there. Look how orchestrated that was. And so I just figured this is what they've been saving because they don't like being called the mob. And so this one guy gives them legitimacy and lets them keep running good people out of restaurants and yelling at people at gas stations and grocery stores and all that stuff. And I really feel like they feel now that they have justification since this one Looney Tune guy sent these bombs. Now they can be the mob. Now they have validation because we have a crazy on our side too. And I don't think that's legitimate at all, but I think that's where they're going.
Yeah, definitely. That is where they're going to go, especially for the next couple of weeks, until everyone votes. Mm-hmm. But I think other people can actually take it in consideration that there's just been so much that's piled up since this situation that they'll probably say, you know what, say there was a Looney Tune and he might have been a Trump supporter, but at the same time, look what they did with Kavanaugh. Look what they did with other situations in the past. And they're just not having it. I mean, they've alienated independent voters for a long time now. There's a lot of independent voters that say, you know what, I actually swing towards Trump because he is right. Not to say that there's always fake news, but the press seems to attack him at every corner. So, he's got some legitimate claims there, and I think people notice that.
Well, I'm really glad that you're highlighting how some of the actions that Democrats have taken have really turned off people in the middle who are the most likely to swing one way or the other. They're not entrenched politically, and they're much more receptive to messaging. And a lot of what the Democrats have done over the past 8 weeks or so has really backfired. And it remains to be seen what look like, and in 2 weeks, what will it look like? We don't know. But I'm just glad that, you're calling it out. I'm certain that is the truth for many, many people in this country who've just been observing and kind of waiting to make up their minds. So speaking of people waiting and observing, what do you think women are going to kind of, like, what's going to be the tack that women take going into this midterm, especially after all that we've seen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, honestly, as we know, women are very smart, and we're not someone who just kind of go with the flow. We kind of stand our ground, and we're strong in our beliefs. That's why they have such a high turnout rate for female voters. And I think, honestly, a lot of us are looking at this and saying, look, the Democrats are playing a lot of games. And when you think about the games that are playing, it's like not just what's happening right now and what's happening with this political atmosphere or climate, but just thinking about the future. I mean, the Brett Kavanaugh situation, who would actually want to put their name down to be a Supreme Court justice in the future if you knew that you were going to be attacked on something you did in high school or did not do? They still never proved anything there. So to me, it's not just messing with what's going on now, but the future looks murky at this point. And I think women know that and understand that.
I also think, and you're making some fantastic points there, Kimberly. I'm actually really along the lines, at least for me, it's a really difficult political climate to look at for men in general. And so does that directly impact me? Well, as a woman, if you're just doing straight impact, no. But if every man is guilty until proven innocent, then that's husbands, sons, fathers. Then it does begin to impact you directly, every woman, which means that the issues that we're looking at with the Democrats, they're not really female issues. It's really an issue of what's right and what's wrong and what's constitutional and what's unconstitutional. And we do have innocent until proven guilty as our right as citizens of this country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of women, I know I sat there and I watched Brett Kavanaugh's wife and his daughters had to sit through that and try to understand why their father was even being attacked at this moment in time. He had nothing but a strong career in the past, and he should have been, confirmed right away. And they're looking at it now. It's like, wow, do we really know our father? What's going on? Are these claims even true? I can't imagine what dinner was like for his family after everything that happened.
Yeah. And, I can't really, especially with their ages, because one of them's very young, so grammar school age, I believe. And then the other one is, a young teen. And so you have, those are two very different mindsets and age groups. And on top of that, they have their mom, and the mom has to be also, supporting and bolstering and doing all that she can. But it didn't stop the anger and the vitriol from seeping in, because they had the reporters camped out on their front yard. And they let them. They gave them the cupcakes and all, which I would have really been, it would have been hard for me to, there's no use in me pretending that would have been my reaction. I would not have. I would have said, this is actually private property, and if you don't get off, I'm calling the police. Right. And, they would have said, well, we're reporters. And I would have said, you have to be on public property. And so you have to find public property that you want to stand on that is not owned by this neighborhood or me before you can actually camp out. And they would have been removed. I wouldn't not have stopped until they were removed. And so they clearly are more suited to public life than some of the rest of us. I'll just say myself. So how do you think that, because that memory is fading just a little bit, and Democrats are anxious to get away from the Kavanaugh hearings, especially with Avenatti being referred by the Senate Judiciary Committee to the DOJ for investigation. What do you think the Republicans can do to keep it's not to keep it top of mind, but just to remind voters, this is what just happened. Don't forget.
Yeah, well, I think, and this is why, this bomber is a good distraction and plays into the Democrats' hands. But I think people should really focus, too, on the caravan that's on its way. That is happening, right now, real time. And that's what I was actually on Fox News this morning talking about. I mean, we're a nation of laws. And so people to come here illegally, that is a crime. And, I was going back and forth with Rochelle this morning about, she's saying, oh, not everyone crossing the border is a criminal. Well, yes, they are. That is a crime. Illegal migration is a crime. And so I think people need to focus on just the real issues right now. And I would say that caravan, always keep Kavanaugh in that situation in your mind. And the Me Too movement. I mean, I'm for Me Too movement. I'm all for strong women, empowering women, speaking up and getting sexual harassers, out in the open, so they have to actually adhere and admit to what they've done and follow the law and wherever it takes them. But the Me Too movement, to me, seemed like an attack on many men that might have just been in situations where it was he said, she said. And it seemed to me that they were attacking all men in a way, not just their credibility, but their careers. You saw a lot of wealthy men. You saw a lot of men that were being attacked that literally, I think they said, was it Samuel Jackson? They said he was saying hello, sweetie, to some people. Yeah. And they were like, well, that was an attack. And it's like, he said hello, sweetheart, and you were attacked by that? So it was like just anything. They were just throwing anything to the wind. And,
Kimberly, they were only upset about that after. So the part that got me about that was when he said it, they didn't have a problem. It was only later that they were like, that was an attack. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it wasn't. You liked it when he said it. Because he's rich and famous and, in every movie. And you thought, oh, he thinks I'm sweet. Now you're like, I'm not sweet. That's no good for me. I just, it wasn't genuine. Like, I have trouble following all that.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. And, it's kind of simmered down a little bit now, but I'm pretty sure they'll rev it back up if they feel like they're not making any traction with the Trump supporter, in quotation, bomber.
Well, I'm hoping this doesn't really, so I used to be a Democrat, okay? I've told people publicly before, so don't be shocked, Kimberly. I was when I was in my 20s, before I got married and had kids. And then after we were married for a few years, we were still Democrats. And it was before we moved to the Midwest. When we moved to the Midwest, it was when things began to change. But long story short, it's not like I can't remember how I thought back then. I still had common sense. So I can't imagine people going, oh, this one guy sends all these inoperable bombs. Well, you know what? I've been feeling really negatively towards the Democrats, but now I've changed my mind because of that crazy guy. I'm going to now go back and vote for the Democrats, or I'm going to change my mind about policy because of this bomber guy. Because, I know it's still serious, and he is going to jail for a long time, but no one was hurt, and it's clear that he was doing this. It's like a stunt. I'm waiting for more shoes to drop.
Yeah, no, it seems like just a scare tactic. Obviously there was a lot of fear and terror, and I understand that. But it seemed like he just wanted to make some of these high-profile Democrats afraid. And to me, I think, the fact that he sent them to particular people, he sent one to Maxine Waters, to Cory Booker, the people that we've heard in the media say, hey, don't let them sit in a restaurant. Don't let them go to the department store. You got to say something. So there is a reason why this, crazy loon picked those particular people. And I think some people will think, well, why did he choose those individuals? And they might actually sit back and think and say, well, you know what? that person did say this, they did say that, and so maybe that's why he chose them. And so maybe people will do some critical thinking here and not say, okay, like you said, this crazy loon with the bombs. Maybe they'll sit back and say, okay, there's a reason why this loon picked this person or these people, and maybe we should really think about why that is too.
Yeah, and then also, and I honestly, I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. Guy, is registered as a Republican. I said he wasn't. So I've admitted twice now in just, less than 20 minutes. But the evidence they're using is like this van. Did you see the picture of the van that with the stickers on it? Okay, so I'm not saying that's not a real picture. I'm not disputing the actual existence of it. But did you find anything odd about the van, like the stickers and all that?
Yeah, I don't know where he even got half of those stickers. It seemed to me maybe that was something that he printed on a printer and then cut and paste under tape. I don't know.
Perfect
I've never
squares.
seen a lot of
Did
those
you notice
stickers.
that?
Yeah.
It was like it was perfectly, if you sign up for one of those programs where they wrap your car with that that's super plastic, and you drive your car around like that on the highway, and they pay you a monthly fee to drive your wrapped car. I know it's more prevalent in like big cities, and you can make enough to cover more than your car payment doing that. But the reason they're able to make it fit so perfectly is because they order it for your make and model of car, and then they wrap your car. They like electromagnetize the car. They put the thing on there, and it sticks. Those windows look like that, like a professional. Like, who is this guy? I want more details before I really. Yeah. I still have I have some things I'm holding back. I've admitted that I was wrong, but I'm holding some reservation here.
Yeah, no, it was definitely laid flat, kind of like tinting on your windows.
Yeah.
And it looks brand new also. So it's like he got, I guess, radical within the past couple weeks.
Well, yeah.
Driving down the highway, it's not going to look that good.
In Florida.
After a couple of rides.
After the whole summer. You only have to be in Florida for 7 days to have a little bit of oxidation show up on the black parts of your car. The parts around your windows and stuff. Florida heat is something amazing. Mix it with the air that has the sea water, kind of breezes coming off the sea. I can't believe it would look that pristine unless, as you said, he just recently had it done. And then what's the impetus for that? Like, what made him go have it done recently? What made him go do the bombs? I'm interested in more details.
Yeah, absolutely. So am I. But I have to say what stuck out most to me was when the tarp flew off so easily as the authorities were taking it away. Almost like, we're covering it, but let's go ahead and put it out there. It was a Make America Great Again nut. It was like this person had one job.
Right.
And they didn't do it.
Wrap the van with a tarp. Wrap the van. And, it's the tarp from Lowe's or Home Depot. That big, massive one that you can spread over the whole roof of a house. And they're trying to wrap a van in that, and they couldn't hold it down. Yeah, I'm with you.
Right.
You're so right.
Yeah, no, that was perfectly played, I think, and they wanted people to see and to know exactly who was behind this. And so that, to me, was a little unsettling. But, it is what it is.
It's suspect. But you know what? The good news is, just like I smelled a rat when the Kavanaugh thing was going on and Christine Blasey Ford stepped forward, I smelled a rat. Mm-hmm. And it took a bit, took more than 2 weeks, but they uncovered that rat and we all saw it, and it was like for all of us to see. And if there is anything ratty here, there may not be. But if there is, I'm guaranteed it's going to come out. We're going to see it. I hope it comes out before the election, though. Kimberly Clay SiC, thank you. Republican strategist, political commentator. I always love it when you come on. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Stacey. Have a great one.
Okay, you too. Oh, she's so awesome in person, you guys. I met her at Fox DC. Actually, I've met her twice. I met her at the White House also for the reception for Martin Luther King Day. So, Black History Month reception. Yeah. We'll be back with more after this. Stay there.
had a conversation with my daughter about making mistakes and not getting this Christian walk right. I had to explain to her that none of us are perfect, but we are all striving for perfection. Then I was listening to a song by 10th Avenue North called You Are More. The song really explained what I shared with her and reminded me that the enemy would like nothing more than to use the mistakes and things you've gotten wrong against you. But because of Christ, you are more than your mistakes. You are more and bigger than your fears. You are so much more than the choices you've made. And God's love for you never wanes. It never decreases. It never ceases to exist. Today, no matter what you've done or how bad you think it is, repent and rest in the forgiveness and love of the Father. Extend to yourself the same passion and grace that the Father extends. With a heart for the urban family, I'm today's urban woman, Tony Johnson. Connect with us at urbanfamilytalk.com.
We need you to call your senators today. Tell them to put an end to the liberals' filibuster, switch to a majority vote, and defund Planned Parenthood. Your call will make a difference. Call the Capitol switchboard at 202-224-3121 or go to afaaction.net. Again, call 202-224-3121 and tell your senators to switch to a majority vote and defund Planned Parenthood.
American Family Radio.
Samaritan's Purse.
And your family.
Together, we can bring good news and great joy to needy children.
Simply pack an Operation Christmas Child shoebox with toys, school supplies, and hygiene items. Then, drop off your shoebox gift during National Collection Week.
Visit afr.net, click the Operation Christmas Child banner, and then get packing.
America's election headquarters.
A Phoenix ballot proposition aiming to shed light on dark money. Dark money is anonymous political spending meant to influence voters. Supporters of Proposition 419 in the city want more transparency, hoping to unmask wealthy corporate and special interest donors. Arizona's former Attorney General Terry Goddard says secret groups shouldn't be allowed to influence elections.
As citizens, as voters, we need to have as much information as we possibly can, and that information should include where the money came from that paid for the advertisement that's trying to persuade us.
If Prop 419 passes, individuals and organizations would be required to disclose donations of more than $1,000 meant to influence Phoenix elections. Mike Huckins with the Greater Phoenix Chamber of Commerce says the group is diametrically opposed to the initiative and any legislation they deem a threat to their constitutional rights.
It's an attack on free speech.
In Phoenix, Charlie LaPastora, Fox News.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Well, I think the fact that we don't know much about who sent the bombs and what his or her ultimate purpose was has led to a lot of speculation and a lot of crossing charges about whether it was the climate, whether it was language from the right, language from the left. I think from a 30,000-foot view, Brett, Trump's appearance on the public scene 3 years ago seems to have ripped off the shroud that obscured a lot of latent tension between the left and the right in the United States. And since he came down that escalator, you've had insightful comments from both the right and the left, and you've had violence from both the extreme right and the extreme left. If you actually look at most normal Americans, they're nowhere as polarized as it seems the extremes are. And so I think people in Washington need to think very seriously about how we get over this moment, because not only do you have these cultural clashes, and you've had the harassment in the restaurants, you have mob violence, you have assassinations like this, you have a geographic separation. You have a culture forming within the cities and in their suburbs, and then a separate culture forming about 30 miles outside downtowns. And that, I think, when you look at American history, is not a good thing to have.
Wow. And it's not a good thing because it points to polarization. And that's Matthew Continetti of the award-winning Washington Free Beacon. And he is pointing to something that, you know, it's becoming more evident. Now, I do think that if you identify yourself, you know, so if you're coming from the suburbs or the city and you kind of identify yourself through your clothing or through comments that you make, that people are much more willing to welcome you into the tribe. But if you show up and they have no idea who you are, they automatically start to kind of put the ideas and negative stereotypes on you that are prevalent in your geographic area. So if you come from the city or suburbs of St. Louis, that would be that you're liberal, or you're at least liberal leaning, and that you're for higher taxes, and you don't care about schools, and you don't really care about the Constitution and things like that. That's not automatically true of people who live in the city or suburbs of St. Louis. Yes, we are the major population center for the state of Missouri, but there are so many conservatives here. And you need only look at the attendance at Bible study fellowship groups. Oh my goodness, so many thousands of people here in the metro area attend routine, like it's regular. It's a matter of course for them. They attend Bible study, and BSF is difficult. I mean, we have many listeners in the audience who attend BSF, and there are others. There's CBS, there's the other types of Bible studies that people engage in as well. So, I mean, all is not lost, but there's definitely a feeling that people who live a little further out, that 30 miles or more, they feel like the people in the city are voting in things that are harmful to them, and that they don't understand these people. And in some ways that they are a little correct, because I feel like I don't understand some of these people. Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get why anyone would want men to have the ability to shower and use the restroom with women and girls, strangers in public facilities. I don't get that. And I know that people start talking about feelings, but I just don't get it. I don't. And it's the reason why I'm so glad we have the Second Amendment. And I'm a prayer person. I believe in prayer. I believe in praying over your family members and praying before you leave, and all of those good things, asking for the Lord's protection. But he gave provisions for us to be able to defend ourselves. And I really believe in that. And for people who, if you've never shot a firearm before, and now is a perfect time for you to head out. It's about to be the weekend. Go find a range near you. I guarantee you there are a ton. Go shoot 2 or 3 different handguns and 2 long guns, and then join in the conversation. But if you've never fired a firearm, it's hard for me to communicate with you about that issue, because you're not informed. You're not able to have that conversation. So let's talk a little bit about the bombing suspect. I have to give the details. Just in case you're just tuning in, Stacey Washington, host of Stacey on the Right here on American Family Radio, also on Urban Family Talk. His name's Cesar Sayoc. He actually says he's American Indian, but to me, that guy looks like he's from south of the border. Not sure what place, but someplace south of the border. He's Cesar Alteri Sayoc Jr., 56 years old. He was taken into custody outside of an AutoZone store in Plantation, Florida. He's a resident of Aventura, Florida. And they say that in 2016, he registered as a Republican, and he last voted this year. That's according to the Nexus database. He registered as a GOP voter 11 days before the 2016 election and was an early voter in Dade County's 2018 midterm. Sayoc's white van was covered in what law enforcement officials described as right-wing paraphernalia. Right-wing paraphernalia. The Broward County Clerk of Courts lists Sayoc as having been charged with felonies in 1991, 2004, and 2013. In addition, he was charged with domestic violence against his mother, Viola Aletieri, in 1994, and faced a drug court case in 2004. He has had 8 traffic violation charges, 1 a criminal offense, 5 parking offenses. Now, I don't know why they list the parking offenses, quite honestly, because you can park on the wrong side of the street on a day where there's a street cleaning truck coming through and get a parking ticket. Now, maybe if he had hundreds of them, but 8 parking violations in his entire life? Okay. Anyway, they listed that as well. He also had a home foreclosure case against him in 2009. The most recent case against him was a misdemeanor offense in 2014. Public records show he has a past address of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, as well as an address in New Jersey. His extensive criminal history includes arrests for making a bomb threat, battery, and felony grand theft. He's been arrested several times in Broward County, Florida, dating back to 1991, most recently in 2014. So he was arrested most recently just 4 years ago. So it's clearly an ongoing problem for him. So he had 1 year of probation as a sentence for a bomb threat that he leveled in 2002. The charge was withheld by prosecutors as a felony. So following completion of probation in 2003, it was dismissed. So in 2013, he was charged with battery and third-degree grand theft, which is a felony. He pled guilty in 2014 and was sentenced to probation. So, lesson here. Again, you know, we just had this conversation about sentencing reform and criminal justice reform and what the White House is doing. And we heard these wonderful recommendations from Reason Foundation. But you got this guy with this systematic, repetitive, really the guy has a problem with the law. He seems unable to abide by the law. Battery is hands on people without their permission. Third degree grand theft, which is a felony. How did he walk away from that with probation? I don't understand that. So the other thing is, oddly enough, for him to be mailing bombs, dude sent packages to people who don't open their own mail. So many of the packages were intercepted by the post office because the post office scans every piece of mail. That's the lesson here for all of the people. If you go mail bombs, you're not going to get your bombs to your target because the post office scans the mail for bombs because they know lunatics exist. So anyway, he sent all of them, and he sent them to people who don't open their own mail. So this may be a news flash for some people. Most of us, we already know this, but I'll go ahead and state it. Barack Obama does not trundle out to the mailbox and pluck his mail out. And you know how you do when you get your mail out. You kind of flip through. You're looking for checks and actual cards and letters. You're looking for real mail. And then once you realize you have no real mail, you divide it into two piles. One is recycling. The other is, we'll read these later. Or I'm opening these up and I'm throwing away the envelopes and I'll deal with these later. That is what we regular folk do. The former president of the United States does not trundle out to the mailbox and get his own mail. Some staffer gets the mail. Housekeeper, Secret Service agent, whatever, gets the mail. And they scan it and take a look at it and they examine it and then they give it to the president. Okay? Former president, senator, sitting member of Congress. They're not at home opening up their own mail. A real flaw in the plan, if you ask me. So that was interesting. Also, over at ABC St. Louis. So this was interesting because ABC is not known for their conservative thought patterns, but they have a story up here. And so since I was at that kind of the emceeing gig this morning, and I was there pretty much from like first thing this morning, I got up at the crack of dawn, left, went there, and it ran a little long, and then I came back and finished up my show prep, and then, of course, here I am. So this was something that I had a friend sent over to a group of us, and I hadn't had a chance to listen to all of the clips, or I would have had them for my producer to cut for us to use today. But I'm going to post the link on Facebook. You can definitely go over and click through. It's a series of videos posted at ABC St. Louis. Again, I'm just looking. I'm like, it says by ABC 30 News. I'm in shock that they posted this. It says, while most of the national media has been railing against President Trump over violent rhetoric, claiming his words are provoking violence, why hasn't the media been under more scrutiny for the extremely violent rhetoric against the president it has broadcast during these past 2 years? That's what a few prominent conservative critics, many of whom have never politically supported Trump, are saying this week. I'll skip down. It says in the tweets below, each with a video, one is a photo. Ryan Saavedra said, media, we never encourage violence against Trump. Also media, people have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump. Now, I know if you didn't know and trust this program, if you didn't know that I'm not into just making stuff up, you would think you can't possibly be telling the truth about that. But it's right here in black and white. And there's video of this guy on MSNBC, and he says it. He says it like it's not lip synced, it's not gift, it's not made up. He says you have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump. MSNBC's Nicole Wallace said she encouraged Jeb Bush to physically attack Donald Trump. I told Jeb Bush after that debate that I thought he should have punched Trump in the face. Again, imagine a Republican saying that and getting away with it. You can't imagine it? That's because no Republican can get away with that. You go on a little further down, Madonna, I thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House. You remember that moment. It's Inauguration Day, and she's just doing whatever she's doing, which is like, go back to England, Madonna, okay? Kathy Griffin beheads Trump in a photo shoot, says she didn't do anything wrong. Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe on Democrats going after President Trump. If you're going to shoot him, you have to shoot to kill. CNN's Chris Cuomo, who normally loses his mind and goes into, like the tongues, the bad tongues, he didn't. He didn't even respond. CNN's Phil Mudd on Trump. The government's going to kill this guy. Maybe I'm missing something. Kill this guy is metaphorical speak, or does that actually mean killing as in thou shalt not kill as in murder? MSNBC host Nicole Wallace says Sarah Huckabee Sanders should be choked. Why is she still on the air? And I'm not about firing people because they make one mistake or have a bad thought. That the whole idea that they're letting Megyn Kelly go because she said her comments about blackface. I guess I need to address that in the last couple of minutes of the show. And that was the last one. Johnny Depp jokes about wanting to assassinate Trump. You remember that. He's still using his fake Pirates of the Caribbean voice, but he uses it in his real life now, so he talks like that all the time. I don't know what his kids must think. And he joked about wanting to kill the president. So let's talk about this whole blackface thing. So I'm not a Halloween celebrator. So you might say, with my comments and rhetoric on how I don't like having gun debates and conversations with people who've never shot a firearm, that perhaps I can't have a discussion about it. But I do happen to be of the permanent tan. And I do happen to have been taught in school before political correctness entered in what blackface is. And when I say blackface, the true definition of blackface is when a person who's white dresses up as a character from earlier times in the history of this country, where the lips are painted bright red and the skin is painted black, but in a circle on the face so that you can see the edges of the person's skin. And the eyes are also colored in, so it's a caricature of a black person. And then that person dons an outfit. It's a white shirt, I think it's red pants, these strange-looking clown shoes, and they kind of dance around and act like a kind of a buffoon, if you will. And it's supposed to be a racist way of mocking black people. That is blackface. It is abhorrent. It is it's racist, and it's not something that, good, kind-hearted people would engage in. But if you are, let's say, 18 years old and you happen to celebrate Halloween and Beyonce is your idol, and you want to dress up as Beyonce and you're white, and you put on some makeup to make your skin closer to the color of Beyonce, and you're not caricaturing her, you're actually trying to look as close to her as you can. Maybe you have a wig on. Maybe you're wearing one of those signature onesie things that she always wears with the high heels, and you're really going for it. How is that blackface? And so the comments here have been blown so out of proportion, and I just don't understand it. I don't understand how we as black people are the only people on the planet who you can't dress up as a black person because you can't tan your skin to look like the black person you're dressing up as. I guess I better get on the horn with my boss here at the radio station to see if everything's still okay, since I don't understand what's going on here. Pretty sure I'm still safe, though. Good evening from the Heartland. If you're sticking around, you got news from onenewsnow.com up next.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Hey, I'm Miki, co-host of Aaron the Addisons on Urban Family Talk. I want to invite you to be part of our online chat community we've affectionately called The Churbin. While you listen to your favorite programs, you have the opportunity to communicate in real time with the hosts of those programs and other Urban Family listeners. Find out what the talk is all about. Become a Churbinite at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Truth, wisdom, Empower Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. We're not out of the woods yet, and that's according to FBI Director Christopher Wray in a press conference on the arrest of 56-year-old Cesar Sayoc and a string of suspicious packages mailed across the country. Sayoc is from Adventura, Florida, and officials say he has a criminal record.
Today's arrest doesn't mean we're all out of the woods. There may be other packages in transit now and other packages on. So we need the help of everyone out there, every citizen, everyone in law enforcement, everyone we've got to help with this investigation in the days to come. If you've got any information, please call us on our tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI or our email line tips.fbi.gov. No piece of information is too small. Every tip could be the one that leads to something very important.
During a summit today at the White House, President Trump congratulated law enforcement on what he called a swift and far-reaching investigation to find the person or persons responsible.
I've instructed authorities to spare no resource or expense in finding those responsible and bringing them to swift and certain justice. We'll prosecute them, him, her, whoever it may be, to the fullest extent of the law. We must never allow political violence to take root in America. Cannot let it happen. And I'm committed to doing everything in my power as president to stop it.
President Trump went on to say that Americans must unify, and we must show the world that we are united together in peace and love and harmony as fellow American citizens. The Secretary of Homeland Security has toured the first completed section of President Trump's new taller border wall, but the focus of her trip was on the incoming caravan of migrants which started in Honduras. Fox's Jessica Rosenthal.
While Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen was checking out the new wall in California's El Centro sector, President Trump reminded his fans at the White House what he has planned for the Central American caravan.
I called up the military. This is the military, greatest military in the world. I called up the military. We're not letting them in. They ought to go back now.
Nielsen confirmed they've asked for military troops to support the Border Patrol, and the Pentagon is working on those plans. Nielsen, meanwhile, toured a short section of the president's completed border wall.
Walls work. That's not my opinion. It's a fact.
She cited statistics from the mid-90s when fencing was first implemented in the San Diego sector. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
There was robust economic growth over the summer. Jenny Casolo reports.
The economy continued to expand at a strong pace during the summer quarter. The gross domestic product, which measures all goods and services in the economy, grew 3.5%. This follows a 4.2% pace of growth in the spring quarter. However, the report does say higher interest rates are having an impact on home and car sales. Jenny Casolo, Fox News.
A new argument for eating organic. A study from France finds the people eating organic food on a regular basis are less likely to develop cancer, but some nutrition experts are skeptical. They say other factors could be responsible for the cancer stats, and the jury is still out on whether eating organic food will lower your cancer risk. In final news this hour, the city of San Jose, California is combating a litter problem by paying homeless people. Fox's Jeff Manasso.
The city of San Jose will begin next month paying about 24 homeless people $15 an hour in cash to pick up trash off the streets. Officials say it's a program designed to help people like Dwayne Green get back on their feet.
That's going to boost a lot of spirits for everyone, especially me.
The cleanup job funded by San Jose with a $200,000 grant that officials hope to expand. Oakland and San Francisco have similar programs, though pay their homeless in gift cards.
That is the news for this hour. For more news and information, visit onenewsnow.com.
Hello, AFR listeners. My name is Isabella, and I received my Operation Christmas Child shoebox shortly after the fall of the communist regime in Romania. During this difficult time in my life, this shoebox was a splash of color in my black and white world. You can make a difference in the life of a child by packing a shoebox through Operation Christmas Child. Visit afr.net and click on the Operation Christmas Child banner today.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Now, the media spent a lot of time earlier this week challenging President Trump's statement that there were MS-13 or maybe Middle Easterners in the caravan that's headed north. I was asked about it, and I said it was inconceivable that there weren't.
If we do not enforce that border, if we let those in that are in gangs, that are traffickers, drug traffickers, sex traffickers, local law enforcement, end up on the front lines. It makes every town a border town.
It's not all people seeking asylum. And for those seeking asylum, I just want to tell them, please, for your own safety, seek it as soon as possible. Mexico is offering asylum and refuge to everybody who's transiting through Mexico. If you are in fear for your life, please pick it up. Take asylum as soon as you can. Don't make a 6-week journey at the hands of criminals to get here.
The truth is, this caravan is being advanced by leftist groups and human traffickers who have no regard for human life.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Yeah. I'm back. And it's Friday, and I hope you are super excited about the weekend and that you're going to get some rest over the weekend. Even if you're going to be working or you have other things to do, also take some time to get in the pew. If you are one of those people, and I have encountered people who have this story where they've been harmed at church in some way, bad relationships, things that have happened, and they've just been so wounded. And, you know, God is so close to the brokenhearted, and you should give church another chance. So it doesn't mean you have to go back to the church where the bad deeds occurred. You can try another church. There's a church out there for you. And there's nothing like going in, and once you've been a while, it takes a little time to get, settled in and feel like it's home, but it's worth the effort. There's some Sundays where every Sunday it's hard to get out the door. I don't know what it is. It must be the work of the enemy. You try to get out the door, and no matter what you do, somebody is running behind, something is going on, yada, yada, yada. But when you get there and you sit down, and you know how we are, we humans, we have this thing about, that's my pew, that's my corner of the pew, that's my row, whatever. So you go sit in the same place you always sit in. And you sit back, and whether you're late or whether you're there early, when the music starts, and you start praising and worshiping, and you're just so grateful to be there. And then when the pastor starts speaking, I know, especially with our pastor, oh, he's such a blessing to us. Oh, I just thank God for him so much. He's such a blessing. A gifted speaker with a heart of gold means it's a hard, cold heart. His heart is a beating, bleeding heart for the members of our church. And he is on it when it comes to speaking the truth. Regardless of politics, he's speaking the truth from the Bible, biblical worldview, which means he'll comment on news of the day. Some weeks he won't utter a peep about it. It's what God leads him to do. And once you get to a place like that where you're plugged in, it will feed your soul. And so I want to share that with, there may be someone listening who's thinking, I can't go back to that church. Well, you don't have to. You don't have to go back to that church. Find another church that will feed your needs and give you an opportunity to gather together with the saints. Saturday evening services, okay. Sunday morning, Sunday midday. There's even Sunday evening at some places. Find one that suits you and get in there. And God will bless you for your obedience. He will bless you. Let's go to the phones really quick before we dive into, we have DHS Secretary Nielsen, a couple of quick comments from her on the border. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to disagree with what she said, respectfully, but I'm going to disagree. But right now, let's go to the phones. We have Matthew in Kansas. Matthew, thank you for calling the show.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my call.
Hey.
I just wanted to say, this MAGA bomber guy, he sent all these bombs out to all these Democrats. Mm-hmm. But you know what I think? I think he's a CIA plant. He was sent there by the Democrats to make the Republicans look bad.
Well, it could be. I mean, anything's possible. I've heard some people saying use Occam's razor. What is the simple answer is the correct answer. He's self-radicalized and he did this and he's just a lone wolf and, just accept it. He's a Republican. And that could be so. But I would say at this point, anything's possible. I don't know if I'm leaning as far in that direction as what you just described, but you know what, Matthew? Anything's possible. I'm waiting for the real evidence to come out about him. Who funded, the creation of the bombs, if anyone, who helped, did he watch YouTube videos to learn how to make those, and what prompted it? And we should be able to find out more because they're going to, they're probably already at his house just tearing it apart all day today. So we'll learn more. Thank you for calling the show. So let's listen to DHS Secretary Nielsen on the coming border invasion. I got words, and I respect her greatly, but I got words is number 2.
Once we're on this side of the border, what we intend to do, and I think the president's been very clear, if you do not have a legal right to come to this country and you come as part of this caravan and you come in our country, you will be returned home. The rules of engagement for us are the same as they've always been. For DOD, we're still in discussions and we're working them out. We're waiting to see what the caravan's going to do, what numbers we're looking like, where they're headed. Each port is different, as you know. But what we want to do is bolster it. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that what we saw in Guatemala, between the Guatemala and Mexican border, we do not see here.
So, if you have a legal right to come to this country, the way you have a legal right to come to this country is you have a legitimate claim for asylum. And the way to figure out if your claim is legitimate is to go to one of our ports of entry or one of our embassies or asylum centers and apply for asylum there. So if you approach the border without having done that, you do not have a legal right to be in this country. So what is she talking about? And you know what? I'm going to say it. I hope to goodness gracious people don't get triggered, but this is why sometimes women shouldn't be the ones in charge of these kind of military things, like things that have to do with the border and the military. Yeah, I said it, and I'm a woman, but I said it. This is why when you have to sound nice and sweet or your feelings have to be all up in it, not the job for you. We need a stern response to this, not if you don't have a legitimate claim to be here, then you're not going to be allowed to stay. We're talking about 14,000 people. That will overwhelm our system. How exactly are we going to get them out fast enough without them all disappearing into the interior of the country? I can't believe that's what she said. Now, here's a little bit more. I'm not getting worked up today, y'all. It's Friday. I am not getting worked up today. It's number 3.
We do not have any intention right now to shoot at people. They will be apprehended, however. But I also take my officer and agent, their own personal safety extraordinarily seriously. They do have the ability, of course, to defend themselves. I want to make it very clear we will absolutely not tolerate violence against Border Patrol in this situation. These are dedicated men and women risking their lives every day. I will not tolerate Mexicans or anybody else acting in a violent way towards our men and women on the border.
I won't tolerate it. I just won't. And we're also going to be having tea and cucumber sandwiches right after this. I'm wearing my aviators. I'm feeling super cute. And yeah, we're not shooting at anybody. Really? So the idea that their force might be met with unequal deadly force is a deterrent to violence. How did she get that job? Now, y'all know I have spent copious amounts of time on here lauding her when she's in the right. But it's almost like, I'm not sure, is it her? She had on aviators in the clip. Maybe it's a body double just spouting off nonsense and Kirstjen Nielsen just couldn't make it there because she had, her tummy was hurting or something. What does she mean? Well, we're definitely not shooting at anybody. So we're going back to the Obama rules of engagement where we literally have our F-16s streaming out, breaking the sound barrier, our pilots flying over live targets, locked on, ready to drop their payloads, and they would have to wait for the Situation Room to give them clearance to drop. And if they didn't get it, which often they didn't, they would waste 9,000 pounds of JP-8 and have to beat foot back home. Is that what we're going to do at the southern border? Have all of our troops down there with no guns and let them get beat up by Mexicans? I said I wasn't getting upset, and I'm not going to allow myself to get sucked into this melee of crazy that I just heard right there. What does she mean we're not shooting at anybody. How does she know what the military is going to do down there other than she's given them some instructions that they can't shoot? Why are they going down there? To be punching bags for these angry villagers from these know-nothing countries? It's absolutely ridiculous that we have this as a response from her, that she would make an announcement like this. They have to be dancing around their little cloven hooves tonight around their little campfires where they're camping out on their way up here. They have to just be like, well, we know we ain't getting shot, so you know what's up. We beat up the Mexicans at the southern border of Mexico. We bloodied their faces. We tried to break their arms. When we get up there, we'll do the same thing to those American soldiers. The only difference is, unlike the Mexican police, American soldiers have American moms and American dads. They're taxpayers, and so are their parents and their sisters and their brothers and their wives and their husbands. These are Americans, and they are tasked with and have agreed to, they've sworn an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I don't know what Secretary Nielsen was hopped up on there, whether it's Mountain Dew or whatever else, but she's got to come back down to earth and start talking some sense, or just stop doing these fluff interviews with Fox News. And y'all know, I like Fox News. Nothing against it. But if wearing aviators and sitting outside on director's chairs makes you say stuff that doesn't make policy sense, don't do the interview. Do it in studio. Do it by phone. Or just don't do it. Announcing that there will be no deadly force as a threat of deterrence is basically like saying, come on through, gates open. We might have a few Americans standing there in your way wearing uniforms, but just mow them down. We want you here. As Kamala Harris says, we're a welcoming country. I just don't know who she is. I don't know who that woman was. And I know she's not working for the Department of Homeland Security, because last I checked, Department of Homeland Security, I mean, they have their own military apparatus. They have their own equipment. They have their own cache of bullets and whatnot that they've been stockpiling the entirety of the Obama years. He would have them buy up different types of rounds of ammunition and stockpile them for their own use, just to keep the bullets off the market so regular law-abiding gun owners couldn't purchase them. So it's not going to be for want of a lack of materials, hardware, ammunition that they would not be able to shoot. So the president just sent 800 more troops down to the border, which sounds like a paltry sum, especially if they have to use their bodies as the barrier. And in addition to the 800 troops, the president, and I thought this was pretty noteworthy. I'm actually flipping back to previous subject. The president addressed the Young Black Leadership Summit, and the people in there were chanting USA and really enjoying themselves. And I had a friend of mine ask me why. I already explained that in hour one. You have to go back and listen to the podcast. I didn't apply to go, and I'm not there. But I think it's important to note that the media coverage, they're not going to give this the same coverage they would give as remember when Common went to the White House all those times, and Van Jones, and it was always just this fanfare, and they used to talk about how cool Barack Obama was, and how, look at who he hangs out with, and look how close Hollywood is to the president and all that. Remember that? Well, that is actually that's the way they treat their own. But when you have President Trump, who's supposed to be this horrible racist, and also Hitler, and also the devil's spawn, and also all these other things that he clearly is not, they treat him like a stepchild. They even made that negative comment about what the people look like just because they were black. So I guess a group of black people, even if they're in the White House, even if they're wearing MAGA hats, even if they're young and professional and are dressed nicely, even then, if you're a liberal commentator or TV host, that still looks like a group of people who needs to be explained. No wonder all the liberal people are calling the cops on black people in their condos and at the pool and all that stuff. Yeah, that's the trend. And we don't talk about that a lot on the show, how this person who happens to be white called the cops on this other person who happened to be black, and he was trying to get into his apartment building and all that. We don't cover all those on the show because those are individual examples of people being foolish. But notice all the individuals example of those people being foolish, they're all liberals. The foolish ones are all liberals. The reason they say that all the Republicans are racist because they're projecting. The racism is on the left. They're the ones who are scared of black people. They're the ones who don't want to see us moving into their neighborhoods. They're the ones who I can't be in a book club because I'm black. That's what some liberal chick told me once. I mean, I don't make this stuff up. They say the stuff themselves to prove they're racist. Anyway, when we get back, we're going to have Phil Cook, co-founder and president of Cook Pictures. Stay there.
Len Ingram of Redeem Clean felt God call him to support the American Family Association.
I'm a laundryman. I'm the son of a laundryman, too. I love clean clothes. I love the business. I love everything about it. This project was built exclusively to support AFA and AFR. There's no strings attached. Another thing that I would like to see come out of this is that I would like to see other business people feel a calling to support ministries wherever and whatever they do to share the gospel of Jesus Christ.
In addition to your regular AFA giving, Redeem Clean Laundry Detergent allows you to increase your support of AFA just by continuing to wash your family's clothes. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more, find options, and get Redeem Clean products at afastore.net. That's afastore.net.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
The U.S. Constitution reminds us that the responsibility for our government rests with we the people. In order for us to be effective, we need to know something about our government and our history. Citizens in countries ruled by dictators don't need to know very much since the major decisions are made for them, but we Americans should be educated and informed. Unfortunately, we are not well educated and informed. A study done by the Woodrow Wilson National Fellowship Foundation discovered that only 1 in 3 Americans could actually pass the U.S. citizenship test, and I might add that you only have to get 60% of the questions right in order to pass the test. For example, a majority did not know how many justices serve on the Supreme Court. Nearly 3/4 could not accurately identify which states comprised the 13 colonies, and only a quarter even knew why the American colonists fought the British in the Revolutionary War. Most disturbing was the fact that young people perform worst on the test. You might excuse an elderly person for forgetting some facts about government or history, but less than 1 in 5 under the age of 45 could pass this test. In previous commentaries, I've proposed a solution that some states have considered. Require students to pass a citizenship test before they graduate from high school. Consider the fact that a naturalized citizen probably knows more about America's history and structure of government than someone who was born in this country. Young people in America cannot pass a citizenship test for one of 2 reasons. Either they weren't paying attention in class or they weren't taught this material in the first place. Let's require students to pass a citizenship test before graduation. We require it of people who want to be American citizens. Why not require it of students who are already citizens because they were born here? I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Graceworks Pictures, Indivisible, based on the true story of Army Chaplain Darren Turner and his wife Heather. Rated PG-13. Now playing. IndivisibleMovie.com.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Thank you so much for being here. Happy Friday to you. I love it when our next guest comes on. He's one of my favorites. He's the author of The Way Back, How Christians Blew Their Credibility and How We Get It Back. Phil Cook is the co-founder and president of Cook Pictures. Phil, happy Friday to you. Thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks. It's always an honor to be here. I love being on your show. You ask great questions, so it's fun to be here.
I enjoy our chats, I have to say. I love the entertainment angle. You know, you're coming from a different world. For me, it's like, you know, I could actually interview you. Like, we could sit and have coffee at some coffee shop and just talk for hours because I would just love to hear, like, what you know because you've done – it's hard work. So I'm working on a documentary with – an organization here in the state of Missouri, and it's on tax policy. And so we've been traveling all over and interviewing legislators, and I'm going to get to travel out of the state to interview Art Laffer, who is one of my, like, he's an economist, and he's like, to me, he's a rock star. And I've actually written about him in an op-ed before. That's how much I like his work. So I'm going to get to interview him. But there's so much that goes into making a 28-minute, you know, documentary or puff piece or whatever someone would call it. And you do even longer form things than that. So I just have a lot of respect for, it's hard work. The cameras, the equipment, the little minibus that takes everybody, including the equipment, all over the place. the guys, they have to be professionals. They can't be slackers. It's good work
Yeah.
that y'all do.
It's a lifestyle. We've done it all over the world. We produce programming in about 60 countries around the world. And what you'll find is film crews, video crews, no matter where they are, they operate the same. They have the same rules. They're very similar in the way they respond. So it's like a Bedouin camp, We all just move in for 4 months, 3 months, 6 months, whatever, and then move on to the next project. So it is kind of fun.
And you bring everything. That's what every time we shoot, they have the big thing that the camera goes on and it slides from side to side. I have no idea what any of it's called.
Oh, yeah.
All the cool
Plus,
stuff, the lights.
I get a kick out of the crew. They bring their raincoats, they bring overcoats, they bring everything, folding chairs, whatever they think they'll need on the set. Flashlights, they got them.
And the tiny coolers. So my thing is I always bring enough water to get me there, and then we're on the set, and I'm thinking, I'm dying, and someone will walk up to me with an ice-cold bottle of water and go, here you go. We brought water. I'm like, oh, my gosh, you guys, I forgot to bring anything. I just brought one, and I already drank it. They're like, we have water. What else do you need? I'm like,
That's
nothing.
funny.
It's just, it's awesome. So let's talk about, you have this, philcook.com is your website. Listeners, the website is philcook.com. It's What About Me Too and Pornography. Now, this is a little bit of tough subject matter. Phil and I will keep it clean, but I just want to give you a little heads up that that's what we're going to be talking about. The Me Too movement and pornography. Tell us what you're talking about here.
Well, it's interesting. When I sat down to write it, the thought has been banging around in my head for a while. The Me Too movement really started here in Hollywood, with Harvey Weinstein and the leaders here that have just been incredibly abusive and taken advantage of women for so long. But it's interesting that as the Me Too movement has developed to politics, to church, to business, to all kinds of places, nobody's really talking about the incredible impact of pornography out there. And it's interesting because pornography, there's just mountains of research that indicate the kind of impact pornography has, particularly on younger people. And so to try to avoid that, I even brought this question up on social media not long ago, and an angry feminist jumped on me that, hey, pornography is fine. It's voluntary. Women do that of their own free will. But then if you talk to Christine Kane or someone like A21 from a human trafficking ministry, you discover, well, that's not always the case. There's a lot of coerced things going on there. So it's just interesting to me that these are questions that nobody seems to be talking about in context of Me Too, but I think pornography is changing our expectations of women, certainly for young men who are growing up. There are studies that indicate young people today see their first pornographic website by age 8. And a generation of young men who have grown up seeing this, and so, I saw one site, in fact, I think I mentioned it in the blog post, that up to 80% of pornography is violence-driven, it's very rough, and that's just not something that we want young people to see. And what's going to happen when these young men grow up and they expect all women are going to be like this? So, I don't know, it was just a question I brought up, and it sure generated a big discussion, that's for sure.
So here's what because you said a lot there, and I'm on the same page that you're on, Phil, and that's because I've spent some time reading. 8 is that's a new number for me. I thought the number was 12. By the time kids were 12, every one of them had seen something pornographic. 8, that's disturbing because if you think about what an 8-year-old child is, for them to see something like that, it's just unfathomable. But the other thing that no one's talking about, and especially it's interesting to me that people on the left and people who are, maybe they don't feel they're political, but they call themselves feminists, they seem to love to tout science. Well, science has shown that watching pornography changes the brain chemistry of men so that the part of the brain that lights up when they see women after they've watched a certain amount of pornography, it has to be a habit for them, it lights up the part of the brain that sees a woman as a tool. So when a man looks at a drill or, a bench press or something like that, that is a tool. He recognizes that as a tool in a certain part of his brain. When a man sees a woman, it's not the same part of the brain as that lights up unless he has a pornography addiction. And then when he sees a woman, he also sees the same part of the brain, a tool. It also changes the amount of stimulation that's required for a person to, be happy with what they're doing. Pornography increases it's like a gateway drug. And the more of it you watch, the more of it you need to watch in order to be satisfied. These are scientific facts. It's not like preliminary stuff. It's factual. why wouldn't that be something that pediatricians and internists are talking to people about to help them know that they're changing their brain chemistry if they're engaging in watching pornography? You're exactly right. It's interesting that pornography use increases marital infidelity by 300%. So think about that, just 300% marital infidelity. In fact, more than half divorces happen because one party says the other has an obsessive interest in porn. So when you look at those kind of numbers, just the impact it's having on marriages and families, I read one study that said 1 in 10 kids under 10 years of age have been exposed to porn. 10% of 7th graders have experienced problems because of porn. That's just, in one study indicated it's only 2 clicks away from most popular websites. That's what's shocking to me. How many parents allow their kids to be unsupervised on their computer or unsupervised with an iPhone or a mobile device? I see little kids with iPads all over the place, and there's, Twitter has it, social media has it. It's everywhere. So it's something that we need to be much more intentional about. If we're serious about women, if we're serious about honoring women, if we're serious about the Me Too movement and the goals we're trying to achieve with that, we can't leave out porn and what the threat, that's a good word, the threat it is to making that happen. And so why would women who claim to want to protect other women, women who are part of the Me Too movement, why would they be so hesitant to call out the connection between the increase in people who watch pornography, because women watch it too, and the connection between that and the high number of people who are sexually trafficked on like the Super Bowl, the day of the Super Bowl, the weekend of the Super Bowl, or the high number of people who are sexually trafficked into this country from South America. They want to come here to live a better life, but they end up being sold into sexual slavery once they arrive, and they end up in pornographic films. They end up in brothels, forced into sexual slavery. And so Me Too doesn't seem to have an opinion on that. No, I've been thinking a lot about the fact that the sexual revolution that really grew so big in the 60s, the sexual revolution is just going to lead this country down a really, really bad pathway, because it simply means anything that stops you from achieving fulfillment, what you think is fulfillment sexually, should be stopped. So anything that, I should have total freedom sexually to do it in any way I want. If I want bondage, if I want violence, if I want whatever, I should be able to do that. And I think a big reason that a lot of feminists are against any kind of stopping pornography is simply because they view it as another expression. The sexual revolution is just, there's really no end to what people want to be able to do sexually, and we should have that freedom, regardless of its impact on families, regardless of its impact on children, regardless of its impact on women. You're exactly right. It's a fascinating question, real irony in that whole women's movement that I think should be addressed. And so, what's the answer? Because I kind of feel like in a lot of ways with Me Too, they started off in one area, like the Harvey Weinstein revelations and all of that. That was kind of like, it was overdue. It was a bubble that needed to be exploded, and the mess was wherever it landed, and we needed that because I've always suspected that Hollywood was kind of that place for many people, but now we know for some people that was the reality. Harvey Weinstein was a predator, and he just all over the globe, really. That's fantastic. That is what we want. We want evil to be exposed. But then you see some of the Me Too movement, it's just about accusing anyone who's a really big star and just taking down men you don't like or men who didn't give you a part you wanted. And then when they started going down that road, I've kind of been like, I can't be affiliated with that because that's just vindictiveness. That's just retaliation for things that slights perceived or unperceived. How do we get, or is it even possible to get the Me Too movement to morph into something that truly represents victims of sexual assault and harassment, that is actually productive, that serves a purpose, or is that ship already sailed? Well, as you know, human nature being what it is, we always seem to go to extremes. We swing one way or the other, and we go all the way as far as we can. And so I think that's a result. We're seeing in Hollywood, for instance, that people are starting to ask the question, does an inappropriate comment, does just being stupid at the Christmas party, just touching somebody on their shoulder or just making them feel icky for a second, does that warrant a life sentence? Does that mean your career is over? Because some people are just ignorant, some people are stupid, and while we want
women to feel completely safe, there is a question of where we draw that line, because for every woman, I think it may be quite different. And so I think it'll be a long time before we really work out where we find ourselves, where in the middle is the right place, because there have already been a huge number of counter lawsuits against women. Some of the men that have been accused are now suing back, and sometimes I think they're probably right. Sometimes I think they're probably wrong. And you just never know because I don't know enough about individual situations. But it's a tough question, and I think a lot of women should feel free to speak up on both sides of the issue. Otherwise, I think that ship may sail pretty quickly.
We need some common sense. And you know what I really think is the problem with Me Too, and there's a lot of things that we could talk about, but I think the core issue is that common sense women who really do have a strong voice and are leaders, are not willing to attach themselves publicly to the movement or do real hard work within the movement because of the way that it's veered off, and it's just into that man needs to be taken down. We've taken 400 scalps. Someone was tweeting, and I'm like, scalps? What?
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
It's not about that.
Right. What?
Yeah. And here's the other thing that I would love to see happen, and that is Terry Gilliam, who's a brilliant British film director, said not long ago that he said, we've heard so much about women that were abused or taken advantage of. He said, particularly in Hollywood, for many of those women, it was a transaction. I mean, they got something out of it. They got a movie part. They got a role in a television series. They got something else. He said the women, and he said, even though that's icky, even though it's weird, the women chose to do it. He said, what I'd like to hear from are the women that said no. When they went in to audition with Harvey, when they went for a meeting with Harvey, and he, did something inappropriate, did something stupid, did something sexual, who are the women that said, you know what, my integrity is more valuable than this, and walked out the door? That's an interesting statement. And so there's just a lot of voices out there talking about it, and I'm curious to see where it goes.
I'd like to hear more. I know Gwyneth Paltrow was protected by Brad Pitt from Harvey Weinstein, so she didn't have to, have the transaction. And then also Stacey Dash, who is now a conservative political commentator, but at the time she was a Hollywood actress. Her brother, actually, when she met with Harvey Weinstein, stepped between her and Harvey and said that she's not one of yours. You're not going to be able to, play around over here. Now, that could also be why Clueless was her only movie, because she was fantastic in Clueless, and you would think with her looks and it was just a great performance there, that she would have had other roles in Hollywood. Now, Gwyneth Paltrow is a different story because of her background with her parents both being Hollywood elites and her, connections there. She could still make movies without Harvey Weinstein, and he would want to cast her because that was something that benefited him. But with Stacey Dash not having those connections, her career really fizzled out. And can we draw that it's from that? Those are the kind of things I would love to know.
That's really true. That's really true. And what's interesting, in Hollywood, I can tell you, this happens in so many ways. My wife, Kathleen, is an actress, and she was for many years very active in doing commercials and promos and TV shows and things. And she got a national spot for a major fast food company, the lead role in a national commercial. It was great. We were thrilled. The night before, this company called her and said, we have salesmen in the field, and after you've done the commercial tomorrow, we'd like you to maybe take your top off and do a version of it for our guys out in the field. They kind of have fun with it, and they'd love to do it. And she said, sorry, you cast the wrong person. And he blew up. I mean, he said, I thought you were professional. I thought you were a serious actress. And he just started intimidating her and just yelling at her. And I thought, young actresses are faced with this on a regular basis. And so it comes from this was a national commercial for a big company. And so you think you would never expect that, and yet it does happen out there. So I always tell people in the industry, be vigilant about that, because it's better that it happened with my wife on the phone the day before than when she got to the set and was surrounded by crew people and executives, tried to intimidate her. Always know your boundaries long before you ever walk into a studio.
Yeah, and you know what else? She had you, so she could be much more confident as opposed to someone who's single and doesn't have any backup.
That's true.
Excellent
Good
story.
point.
As usual, fantastic. Thank you for coming on. PhilCook.com, you guys. Go there. You have a great weekend, Phil. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Stacey. See you later. Bye-bye.
Talk to you later. Okay, we'll be back with more. Last segment of the show right after this. This is Just a Minute with Stacey Washington. Americans have watched in horror as Judge Brett Kavanaugh suffered a political hit job, a smear campaign intended to derail the nomination and energize Democratic voters. At first, it seemed to be working, but just 3 weeks later, voter enthusiasm on the political right is surging. People are engaged and outraged with righteous indignation at the low politics in evidence. God's word has a thing or two to say about setting traps to ensnare others. Don't do it. If you set a trap for others, you will get caught in it yourself. If you roll a boulder down on others, it will crush you instead. They spread a net for my feet. My soul was despondent. They dug a pit before me, but they themselves have fallen into it. He who leads the upright along the path of evil will fall into his own pit, but the blameless will inherit what is good. The trap set to destroy an innocent will only catch you. I'm Stacey Washington. Find out more at StaceyOnTheRight.com.
Netflix continues to ignore the outcry about 13 Reasons Why. The American Family Association, along with Parents Television Council and several other pro-family groups, have reached out to the streaming service urging the cancellation of their program. Netflix has not even responded to our letter. Instead, they released an even more vile Season 2 and are producing Season 3. Netflix CEO Reed Hastings says their program is engaging and that it fosters discussion of taboo topics like suicide and sexual assault. But at what cost? 14-year-old Anna Bright and several other teens have committed suicide after watching the show. Hastings calls our objections propaganda. Does he feel the profitability of his company is worth more than the lives damaged or lost because of his show? Please sign our petition to Netflix, learn more, and share our action alert when you visit afa.net. And pray Reed Hastings will recognize the dangers of 13 Reasons Why.
I'm Hank Weinblum, tossing a flag on your word of the week.
Pass interference, defense number 21.
Interference, a frequent penalty in football, an occasional game-changing play in baseball.
He leaps, and it is out. They may be calling it interference.
That's from TBS. The word is from French, entreferir, to strike each other, like that NFL pass interference penalty. Or if some radio signal gets in the way of you hearing me right now, that's interference. A meddling mother-in-law interferes. In politics, Kellyanne Conway says,
"We're not trying to interfere."
Or think obstruction of justice. It's something President Putin denies.
People are talking about the purported interference of Russia with the election process in the United States. Russia, as a state, has never interfered with the internal affairs of the United States.
Trying to stay out of the way with your word of the week, Hank Weinblum, Fox News.
Welcome back to Stacey on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
It's pretty obvious to most people that a wall would stop this kind of thing from happening, or at least people getting through. That's what used to be the case in California, across the border from San Diego and the nearby places there. People used to gather en masse and just run across when the sun went down. And when they put in the triple fencing, people couldn't do that anymore. It's one of the most controlled parts of the border that we have. So we need more barriers like that to prevent these kinds of things from happening. But this caravan is also headed for the legal port of entry and aiming to take advantage of our laws and policies that have been applied there. And so we do still need changes in the law to give the government more flexibility in dealing with people who are applying for asylum.
And not only
so
giving...
That's a different problem.
Not only giving, our government more flexibility, also we have to talk about the kind of message that this could send to other countries.
That's exactly right. And the message is already out. We've seen lots of other countries, people from places like Bangladesh, increasing the numbers of apprehensions in other parts along the border, especially Arizona. We're also hearing reports now from the northern border of people from Romania, for example, hundreds of people arriving at our northern border and asking for asylum and coming in that way. So the message is out to the rest of the world that if you show up at our border, you can get through by asking for asylum, and we cannot continue to send that message.
Yeah, so all you have to say is, I'm in fear for my life, and then boom, you're in. And there's no tracking. It's just like, oh, the automatic in. We're already letting 1 million people a year in here. Do you understand what that means? 1 million people a year? We also do have babies in this country on our own. And coincidentally, that immigration number for lawful immigration, obviously it doesn't include the refugees, asylum seekers, and illegal entrants. Add to that the fact that we abort 958,000 people a year. So do you see what's going on here? We import people from other countries, people who fly the Honduran flag, people who have no interest in learning how to speak English or becoming Americans. Meanwhile, we're killing off our own. Do you think it's a coincidence that we're sowing seeds of lawlessness and death and destruction by the abortion debacle in this country, and that we have problems with our border, that we have impotent leaders who can't seem to get anything done? It's not an accident. When we sin, we receive the recompense for that sin in real time as a country. As a nation, God pays out the good and the bad right on the spot. And people are surprised. They're like, I just don't understand why we have school shootings. You don't? Are you unaware of the Gosnell horrors that happened? Are you unaware of Planned Parenthood selling fetal parts to our U.S. government and our colleges? Rape epidemic on colleges that purchase fetal remains so that they can graft them onto mice. It's all connected. And so instead of getting angry because I'm pointing it out, it's time to get onto the prayer warrior program. That's where we're praying and interceding and begging for forgiveness, asking the Lord to heal our land. Now, this was Jessica Vaughn. She works for the Center for Immigration Studies. She was on Fox News, and that was the clip you just heard. And, she's right. The wall does stop the incursions. That's why San Diego doesn't have the same rate of illegal immigration at that section of the border that it's next to, because they put up fencing. And there's also video out online of the first section of wall that has been completed under President Trump's work that he's been doing to try to, shore up places that don't have wall. And I'm just so glad that he's even gotten some of it done. Now, understand that if someone is an illegal immigrant or wants to be, they're going to just go to another section of the border that is not, fenced, that doesn't have a wall, and they'll enter there illegally. Or, as she said, it's so much easier than trying to, cross the desert in the middle of the night and dying of dehydration. Just go to the center and say you're filing for asylum. That's what all 15,000 of those people plan to do. They're not going to bother with trying to cross areas that are dangerous that people die in. I mean, can you imagine? American ranchers in this country who live on our southern border, they often will go out into their property, ride out on horseback, ride out on, get in their Jeep and ride out on their property, and they find dead people out in the just out there, just on their property. Dead people who have died of dehydration, whatever. They've died on their property. I mean, and it's bad enough if you have any kind of space in your yard at all, and you've ever had a deer pass away on your lot. We had that happen about 6 months ago. And I mean, it was just so. As soon as we saw it there, my husband went out and took a look, and then we called over to our municipality where they will have someone come out and take the deer. And they sent someone, but he didn't come until it was almost 2 full days after we called. And I'm just not even going to describe what was going on in between our phone call and what happened when they came and picked it up. But I mean, this is just like you're wondering to yourself, is this America? is this America? And I don't know who is calling me at 3:49 when everybody and their grandma knows I am on the radio until 4 o'clock. So you will go to voicemail and you probably won't get called back until Monday just because you ain't right. So it is wrong for us to have this going on. And the election that's coming up is a perfect time for, let's say you've been voting based on, any number of different things. And there is no condemnation in Jesus Christ. If you are coming to the realization that maybe your voting patterns don't reflect a Christian worldview, and you've been reading and you've been, doing some studying, and you're like, you know what, I know God has better for me to do with my vote. I need to vote in a godly fashion. Today, David Barton of Wall Builders was talking about how you have to vote for religious freedom. You have to vote for people who there's 10 commandments, and out of those 10 commandments, 3 of them. So you want to vote for people who are in favor of life from natural birth, from conception to natural death. You have to vote for people who are against murder and any policies that facilitate murder, the killing of innocents. And you have to vote for people who are not going to infringe on the right to publicly express our faith. And the public expression of faith that reaches into so many different areas. Like, for instance, what the LGBT movement is trying to do right now, which is they push out anything that has to do with Christianity and they replace it with LGBT. Any person who would support that, that's a person you can't vote for. Now, you might say, well, what about this issue? What about put God's priorities first? You're on the right path if you're listening to this program. You're on the right path if you're reconsidering your worldview, if you're trying to line it up with Christianity, a Christian worldview, which means the Bible comes first. But prioritize. There are a lot of things that if a person fits into my categories and they're right on, then if they're not right on another area, I consider that to be kind of a challenge for me, praying for that person and also communicating with them to bring them to the right side on that one issue. But if the person is in the wrong on all of the biblical issues, but they're on the right side on the let's say they're against gas tax, or they're against raising the gas tax or any taxes at all, well, sure, that's an important issue, but that's not the issue that I'm going to be at the judgment seat. Well, you voted for someone based on their taxes, and that's way more important than the issue of whether or not they support abortion. That's just not what's going to happen. And we're all going to be held to account for every word, every thought, every deed, and every vote. And I don't want to be responsible for you. I'm telling you the truth because, first of all, the truth cuts aside all of the other nonsense, and it lays bare the motives of the heart, and it gives you the ability to make the decision you need to make. And then the other thing that happens, if you're listening and you're thinking, you know what, I'm starting to feel a change, that's how it was for me. I was listening to the radio, Christian radio, when I became aware that my political views, and specifically my votes for certain candidates, did not line up with the Word of God. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, wow. So here I am, I'm pregnant. My husband and I are searching for a church home, and I don't know if I've been voting right. And I want to live for God. I want to have a Christian household where this baby is going to grow up. And my husband's on board, but how do I keep voting the way I've been voting? And it really became an issue. I didn't wrestle with it as much because I didn't really feel like my identity was tied up in being a Democrat. It wasn't like for some people I know where being a Democrat is their identity. It's more important to them than being a woman or black or what part of the country they live in. It is their sole identifier that they are Democrats. I didn't have that much of a problem with that as it being like a descriptor for me, but I still felt like there must be something about the Republicans that was inherently bad because I didn't know anyone who looked like me who was a Republican. And so I started looking up the party platform. I started looking up the individual candidates. And I remember on the candidate side, I just started reading what they were actually talking about doing. And the things they were talking about doing really lined up with what I already believed. I was kind of surprised by that they were talking about issues that I agreed with because I assumed I couldn't be agreeing with them at all because I was a Democrat and they were, Republicans. And so, you know, in the end, it's not about Republican, Democrat so much as it is about what God's word says. And I did compare. This is what God's word says about pro-life. Is what it says about not coveting your neighbor's ox or your neighbor's wife. You know, the whole taxation thing. There's every issue. God's word has the answer. And if you go with that, you're never going to be wrong. First of all, with your biblical worldview, it'll be right on point because you're going straight from the Bible. You don't have to worry about what happens at the judgment seat. And you can also, it helps you feel so much more assured of what you're doing. And then you know, look, I voted based on these biblical issues. So if you don't identify with the Republicans, or if you know, whatever your problem might be there, it's not about the Republican Party. It's about this candidate on these issues lines up with the Word of God, and this candidate doesn't. And then you make your choice. And if you end up voting for one side more than the other, you can still be an independent, because there will be times, especially if you're living in an urban area, where the choices will not be as easy to make. It'll be more nuanced, but your only options will be Democrats. And we were in that situation when we lived in the city of St. Louis, and so I had to choose the least radical Democrat to vote for. But we still voted. And we still voted, you know, that we would vote for Democrats, even though we knew by then I was like, we're basically like Republicans. We're independent Republicans or something like that. But we were voting for candidates who were not radical, who still had some bedrock beliefs. And that's harder and harder to find on the left. But it still doesn't obviate your responsibility to make that choice. So it has been such a busy week. And I wanted to check and give you a little bit of a preview for next week. On Monday, we're going to be talking to Amber Athey. She's a media and breaking news reporter for the Daily Caller. She's been on the program before. Super excited about talking to her. You know, we love the Daily Caller. Aaron Hawley, name sound familiar? Her husband's running for the Senate against Claire McCaskill. He's the current Attorney General of the state of Missouri, and he is, he's been on the program. We've invited Claire. She hasn't said yes. Aaron Hawley is an associate professor of law at the University of Missouri School of Law, and she's the author of Living Beloved, Lessons from My Little Ones About the Heart of God. She's joining us on the show on Tuesday. And so that's going to be really exciting. We're going to get to speak with her. And then I have some other hopeful surprises for interviews for next week that I'm tentatively working on. And I hope to share fun things with you about that next week. But for all of it, I'm just super excited about the weekend and getting to have some downtime after a very long week. And I also wanted to encourage you, if you're looking for something to read that is like a political buffet, think like the best buffet you've ever been to. And we don't really eat at buffets that often anymore, so that's saying something. The book is called Ship of Fools, and I got it on Audible, and I've been listening to it. It's read by Tucker Carlson, and I'm learning so much from this book about the history of the political left in this country and how we really need the political left to balance out the political right, because there's a certain, like, unfettered capitalism leads to things like we see at Amazon, where employees can't use the restroom. Every step they take is tracked. You know, it's like totalitarianism working for Amazon. And it's the same for other companies. Apple's operations overseas in China, where lots of their employees commit suicide. That's unfettered capitalism. We need liberals to be against that. It's a great book. I can't recommend it enough. So Ship of Fools by Tucker Carlson. It's really great to listen to when you're doing your work around the house or driving on Audible. Okay, that's the show. Hey, citizens, enjoy your weekend. Get in the pew. Get that tank fill up by gathering together with the saints. And I'll be back with you on Monday. See ya.